Hi, and welcome to the Dell Technology session for Data 3 JuiceIT. My name is Dan Sobczak, and I'm a principal engineer for our compute and systems management products. Today's session is going to be focused around our Dell Technologies PowerEdge and OpenEdge portfolio and how we can help drive the journey towards autonomous compute infrastructure. And so with that, let's get started. I don't think it's any real surprise around the challenges that are facing today's businesses and the IT teams in particular. There's certainly a lot of demands on IT teams' time, and the business is asking them to do a lot more with a lot less. The focus really has to be around driving value for the business, and IT can't just be seen as that cost center. And so in today's session, we're really going to focus around that idea of limited human resources and how do we do more with less, and how do we speed up the operational efficiency inside those IT teams. When you look at what is driving value inside different organizations, there's four common themes that come out. Firstly, it's operations. It's having an IT team that is efficient and is able to streamline and automate as much as possible of both the delivery and onboarding of new IT assets, but also over that whole entire life cycle of the asset. And that's the part of the session that we're going to focus on mostly today. But there's also some other common themes, things like cloud. Most customers are going to have 4 or more clouds inside their organization. That's a combination of SaaS clouds, hyperscale clouds, and even hybrid clouds between on-premises and public clouds. And integrating and operating between those is a challenge for most organizations. Next, it's workloads. And generally speaking, those workloads are what is driving value for their business. It's how they interact with their customers, it's how they drive better customer intimacy, and it might be how they grow revenue or attract new customers inside their organization. And that's really how they're focusing around that digital transformation and how do they help grow and attract new business for their organization. And lastly, it's this combination of AI and edge. And edge is really different for every type of customer. It's different for a retail supermarket than it is to a bank, than it is to a government agency. But quite often that edge location is typically closest to your customer. And it's typically where you're creating data and hopefully driving value from that data around the customers that you're integrating with. And so again, for today's session, we're going to focus mostly around that operational piece, but we've certainly got areas and solutions around all of these areas that Dell Technologies can help. 2020 really challenged the status quo. It really shifted the way that we interacted. We moved to virtual events and engagements just like this. And our research tells us that more than 5 years of digital transformation happened in just the last 12 months. And that was due to necessity. Customers had to change the way that they did business overnight. And our customers told us that more than 80% of their customer interactions were digital in nature. And that's likely to be a high priority and is certainly going to continue where they're focusing their efforts around innovation for going forward over the next few years. And certainly there was a lot of projects that customers had to do to enable that rapid shift to work from home and learn from home. And we certainly worked with a lot of different customers around how do they shift their entire workforce to working remotely overnight, something that Dell Technologies had a proud heritage in for more than 10 years. And also how to enable students and teachers to learn from home. Again, a big shift that we've done for a lot of different customers, whether that be schools, higher education institutions like TAFE and universities. And lastly, healthcare. That rapid shift for healthcare and how do we keep our essential workers working effectively. Then there were some of those innovation projects, working with different organizations around how do they enable the use of artificial intelligence and cameras to understand that were people entering a supermarket or a retail space wearing a mask. That was done as part of an AI project. Then there were things around how do we move 50,000 spectators into a football match in a COVID-safe manner? And how do we look at pedestrian traffic and footpath traffic to understand that are we compliant with the laws and regulations in place around COVID? This is really where the innovation starts to kick in. And Dell Technologies is a proud partner and happy to support a lot of our customers on those journey as we move forward over the next few years. At our recent 15G launch, just over a month ago, we launched 17 new platforms across the Intel and AMD space for our PowerEdge servers. And really, these were 3 key themes that came out as part of how do we help drive that innovation across our customers through servers. On the first side, we've got adaptive compute. And this is really about how do we create platforms designed for the workload and allowing IT teams to help innovate and create value inside their business. Because as we've just discussed, the edge location is very different to a software-defined data center. And creating different sorts of platforms that are specialized for the workload is really what that message is about. whether that's a general purpose server or even up into our solutions portfolio around things like hyper-converged or even our storage platforms. And then we have resilience. And for a long time, Dell Technologies has always said security is not just a bolt-on. It has to be inherent in everything we do. And we've had our cyber resilient architecture, which included things like our silicon root of trust for secure firmware delivery. But now we're increasing that with things like secure component verification, the ability to understand the entire logistics chain of every component going into every server that you purchase, as well as things like our secure supply chain and real-time BIOS scanning. That's really a big focus for Dell Technologies around the security and how to ensure that the data and the servers themselves are free of malware, malicious code, and you can verify every level from the hardware all the way up to the software stack. But for today's session, we're really going to focus on that third pillar, that pillar of autonomous compute infrastructure. And if we think about this journey of autonomous compute infrastructure, it's not a new idea, and it's something that we've been involved in for well over 5 years. We've had a lot of time and money invested into how do we drive this innovation. We've really been a leader in the idea of server automation and how do we move our servers into production as fast as possible. So we're already delivering value for our customers in that space, but we want to enable more. We want to build on that platform and really take it through to this idea of complete autonomous infrastructure that we'll get to over the coming years. Really, this is about how do we take servers, move them into production, move them through their entire life cycle, and do that in as automated way as possible. We know that automation removes the chances for error. More than 75% of unplanned downtime is due to a manual process. We know that if we can remove that manual process through smart software and intelligent infrastructure, we can remove as much as possible of that unplanned downtime. We know that we can deliver more cost savings and make the journey towards autonomous infrastructure easy. So what does that journey towards autonomous compute infrastructure look like? Well, I like to use the analogy of a car. If we think back to a car of 10, 15, or 20 years ago, they didn't really have things like automated parking, adaptive cruise control, and automated braking. But if we think about a modern car, we come to expect those things. And it's the same for us with autonomous compute infrastructure. We're certainly not at level 5 complete automation, complete self-healing and self-driving today. And it's a journey that we're going to go and continue to build on over the next couple of years. And it's certainly where we're going to continue to invest our innovation into from a platform. And if you look at this innovation spectrum, when it comes to this autonomous infrastructure, most customers have the ability to get to level 2, level 3, and potentially level 3 or level 4, depending upon the sort of task. But really, this is about using intelligent automation to take time away from our admin teams, spending on some of these rudimentary tasks like firmware updates and compliance management. We really want to enable this idea of automated steering or automated braking with inside your intelligent infrastructure. Yet I'm still amazed at the number of customers that I talk to that are still at level 0 or even level 1. So if you are one of those customers that perhaps hasn't embraced as much of the autonomous infrastructure that's possible today, let's talk about how do we get you started. We really want to get you focused around starting to remediate some of those simple tasks to allow you to free up that time for the business, and then eventually help you get to the self-driving, self-healing, self-optimized infrastructure. So we see our Open Managed portfolio as a key enabler of this technology. Using Open Managed Enterprise, we've already enabled automatic deployment and are already providing lots of value to our customers around things like deploying servers into their organization. So using things like server-initiated discovery, I have the ability to simply enter the service tag of the server and rack, stack, cable, turn it on, and then have the system automatically onboard that server into service. Applying the right security posture, applying the right BIOS and configuration settings, and potentially even deploying the operating system, all without any user intervention. And again, that can be enabled in just a few seconds in a pretty simple process. But if you're not the sort of customer that's deploying lots of servers all the time, it's still really important to look at some of those tasks around things like configuration management and also firmware management. If we think about things like configuration and firmware management, it's really important to understand how do I set a consistent baseline within my environment, have the system tell me when those things have changed, or when there's new firmware packages to download, and then create an automated way to deploy those packages. Again, something that we can set up in a number of seconds and in just a few steps. Really simple ways to start to automate that journey. We know that having things like our firmware up to date is really important for our security posture. And if we're talking about maintaining that resilient architecture around security, up-to-date software is really, really important. Then we think about health reporting, understanding what's happening in the environment, what the performance characteristics are, and potentially if there's any part failures or issues along with the server. Not only do we have our health dashboarding inside OpenManage, but we also have this ability to enable Support Assist. And so Support Assist is a plugin that enables automatic case creation with Pro Support. The ability for, let's say, a power supply to fail, automatically log a case with Pro Support, send any potential logs, and have us start to automate that process of replacing the part or sending a part and technician to, again, speed up the process. Less time interacting with Pro Support and more time focusing on innovation inside the business. Now, if you're not the sort of customer that's using a lot of our OpenManage toolsets today, we certainly encourage you to get in touch and understand how OpenManage can bring value to the business. Now, we also have OpenManage Enterprise, which we've just spoken a little bit about, but we also have some really powerful integrations. We have a couple of really powerful integrations into the leading hypervisors, so a plugin for VMware and a plugin for Microsoft, which really enables full stack automation and configuration of the entire infrastructure directly from the hypervisor console. The ability to do cluster-aware updates in a VMware environment or a Microsoft environment, and making sure that we've got consistent imaging, consistent firmware, and consistent software the whole way through that software stack. Now, if you're the sort of customer that's invested in a lot more of automation and you're heavily down the API path, we have our extensible APIs, which we can use with things like Terraform, Puppet, and Ansible. Again, just a number of ways for us to help you get started around automating that management stack. One of the other key areas that we see is this ability to augment operations. IDC has been telling us for a little while that in just over 12 months, more than 75% of our IT operations are going to be supplanted in some way, shape, or form by AI or analytics-driven automation. And that's going to result in an incredible cost saving for our business. That ability to free up around a quarter of our administration team to focus on delivering innovation to the business, rather than focusing on operational tasks. But in order for us to enable this automated operations, we really need more data points. That alert management and event management is really no longer enough. So we've created the concept of telemetry, particularly for our server technologies, to enable more data points to flow into analytics solutions so we can start to get more proactive and remediate and start to augment some of these IT operations. And really, this is about that shift towards reactive management towards proactive management. A lot of our IT teams spend too much time focusing on the hottest issue of the day or the reddest trouble ticket. Spending too much time gathering logs, doing log correlation, and really just focusing on that burning issue rather than being able to get in touch with the business and focus on delivering innovation. And quite frankly, it takes a lot of our customers far too much time to understand what's happening and respond to incidents rather than being able to be proactive. So this idea of proactive management is really about providing simple, consolidated views and access to allow us to start doing proactive and predictive analytics. Again, taking all of those data points that we've collected, potentially applying some machine learning on top, and making it smarter and easier for us to get proactive inside the environment. Really, this is about marrying human intelligence and machine intelligence to deliver faster innovation and insight into our organizations, allowing us to plan ahead, resolve planned downtime rather than unplanned downtime, ultimately improve productivity for our IT teams, and reduce risk for the business. This is the benefit that we see around in augmenting this IT operations with machine intelligence. So how are we going to do that? Well, in Q3 of this year, we're proud to announce the launch of Cloud IQ for PowerEdge. Now, anyone who's seen our storage systems is probably familiar with Cloud IQ. Cloud IQ is Dell's cloud-based service to enable monitoring, inventory, component health information, even performance and capacity planning. We're taking the same concepts and now bringing it out for PowerEdge. So Cloud IQ will be a plugin for OpenManage Enterprise. So we'll still have that same consistent infrastructure for on-premises assets with this Cloud IQ enabling for telemetry streaming from those servers off to Dell's cloud service. And again, the idea here is to enable things like dashboard reporting, no matter where you are, monitoring, inventory, down to firmware management, what the licenses are on particular servers, but also being able to start getting into things like component health, understanding all the different parts of the server, where any potential issues may lie, and how we can start to do service management faster on those systems. Again, when we start to think about performance management, this is not only analytics of what's happening inside the system, but also things like performance data and capacity planning data. Again, so we can start to help the business be prepared for new projects, new technologies, new innovation, but also ensuring that they can focus on delivering that innovation rather than being reactive around the operations tasks. So Cloud IQ is coming out for PowerEdge in Q3 of this year, and we're really proud of the benefit that it will bring around some of this analytics capability for PowerEdge. So if you're the sort of customer that doesn't want to necessarily send all that data to Dell's cloud service, this is really based around our telemetry system, which we've had available for a little while now inside our technology. So we can take telemetry from things like servers, storage, networking, operating systems, applications, and workloads, send that off to an analytics solution, and then feed that into a dashboard to create visualization technologies. Again, looking at things like how do we create a holistic view of the organization around what's happening inside the environment, allow us to do better predictive analysis for things like security and capacity planning, and ultimately reduce downtime inside the organization. And so all of this telemetry data is based around iDRAC. So iDRAC is our intelligent automation engine that ships as part of every platform that we make. The idea here is that we can collect over 180 different metrics from that system and send it off to an analytics solution. So things like performance data, thermal data, and even sensor data from the systems themselves, package that up and send it off to any one of these analytics solutions that you see here. Generally based around some form of collector, feeding it off to a database, and then generally a visualization or reporting mechanism that sits on top of that. So we recognize that Splunk's one of the most leading analytics packages out there. And quite frankly, a lot of our customers were asking us to create a package that took this telemetry data and fed it into Splunk. So we went ahead and created an ingress collector specifically for Splunk base that's available as an add-on to take that telemetry data and feed it into the Splunk enterprise database. We then created an enterprise visualization dashboard based upon Dell technologies that allowed our customers to create customized visualization dashboards for how they want to interpret that data. So again, using any of those data points to start creating performance metrics, power metrics, whatever the case may be, not only from our server technology, but all of our other Dell Technologies assets as well. This is really about creating a streamlined way to manage the data that's coming from all of these systems. So how do we enable this journey towards autonomous compute infrastructure? I made mention at the start of the session that this was really a journey that was going to take us a couple more years to continue to innovate and invest around. But if we look at these key work streams, this is really where our focus is going to be. Now, certainly if we look at things like rapid provisioning, we're much more advanced in that area than perhaps others. We're already able to do things like zero-touch provisioning, as we mentioned, but we're going to continue to innovate and advance that category as well. Look at full service experience automation, and in particular, that ability to define and deploy a workload rather than simply deploying the server. So if I want to rapidly re-provision different types of server assets for different types of workloads, I can do that as well. Then we're going to look at things like self-healing, building on that analytics capability that we've been talking about to take those data points and allow the system to start self-remediating those issues, potentially even augmenting with our support assist technology to automatically order the parts as needed to prepare for that. So taking and advancing on that IT operations use case we've just been speaking about. This will be benefited by things like Cloud IQ that we're enabling, but also using support assist, for example. Then we'll start to focus on things like self-optimizing and self-maintaining. And really, this is that level 5 automation that we've been talking about. Complete workload tuning, that ability to reassign different workloads to different platforms and start to augment and ultimately create an economic use case around some of those different technologies. And again, this is somewhere that we're going to. We're not quite there yet, but it's a journey that we're proud to be on and proud to support our customers achieve that journey towards complete infrastructure automation. And so with that, it's been a great pleasure to have you at the session today, focusing around our PowerEdge server portfolio, and in particular, our autonomous compute infrastructure framework. Thanks for joining the session. Please feel free to scan the QR code, enter the survey for a chance to win a set of headphones. It's been a great pleasure to have you at the session, and we'll open up for some Q&A. Thanks for joining us.